Hello, and welcome to the Tech Done For You interview series. I'm your host, Gina Decker, and I'm here with Mitchell Levy, and he will be talking about demonstrating your thought leadership. I am so excited because Mitchell is the AHA guy. He is a wonderful speaker and most recently completed a very successful TED Talk. So I'm very excited to have Mitchell here today. If you're not familiar with Mitchell, I'm just going to read off his bio, and then we're going to get started with our topics for today. So Mitchell Levy is the AHA guy at AHAthat, who is a people publisher that empowers thought leaders to share their genius. He is an accomplished entrepreneur who has created 20 businesses in Silicon Valley, including 4 publishing companies that have published over 800 books. Mitchell is a TEDx speaker and international best-selling author with 58 business books. He's provided strategic consulting to over 100 companies, has advised over 500 CEOs on critical business issues, and has been the chairman of the board of a NASDAQ-listed company. So thank you, Mitchell, for joining me for this series.
Gina, great to be here. And,
yeah.
and Des actually, Des was a co-author in one of the books close to the beginning, certainly in the top 50.
Oh, wow.
We made some good money together with that one.
Nice. So we've got a lot of authors, and I'm an author of 6 books, so I can't necessarily say I have as many books as you've got published, but definitely. And so, I'm very excited that you're here to talk today with us. And so let's just jump right in. What is thought leadership, and why should people care about that?
You know, it's a very interesting topic, and it's kind of interesting because as I was preparing for the TED Talk, and you can give the URL, it's just aha.pub/TED Talk. And as I was preparing for that, I really spent about 6 weeks of my life just singly focused on this one area, this one presentation, this one way of thinking. And now what I realize, it's permeated in a way I discuss going forward. And so I used to always speak about thought leadership. I still do, but now it's in terms of what does it mean from that TED Talk of how do we transition from the industrial age to the social age. So we'll start with a simple statement. We do business with people we know, like, and trust. Right? Now, the like and the trust happens from a number of different reasons. What I'd say is, how does that interaction first start? The trust is, do you actually deliver what you want to do? And we have a couple, you'll see more in the TED Talk. The interesting part is one of the things that you figure out from trust and potentially even know is Yelp scores, right? If you reach somebody, if you go to a new town, you're going to stay at a hotel, you're going to go to a restaurant, you want to use a new service, you're going to look for a review of that person from people who are like you. That helps you understand the trust factor. Amazon's a great example, right? Although so many people game the system, that's a great example. The part of the equation, though, is at first people have to know about you. You have to be known, right? And the issue is the most important element is to make sure that if somebody needs to know you, so here's the interesting part. I'm saying if somebody needs to know you, so not everyone needs to know you, right? The person who is washing dishes in a restaurant in China probably never needs to know about any of us, right? That's okay. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? So you don't need to advertise to the dishwashers in China, right? Unless, of course, you have some service that's appropriate for them to take advantage of. So the interesting part is that you need to be known enough so that if your prospect, whoever that is, has a problem, and what do they could do when they have a problem? They have something that needs to be addressed. They have a pain point they have, and they're going to say, I need help with. Now, if it's done for you funnel services and you're busy, Gina, I still may go to you and say, I know you, Gina Decker. You're good at this. Who should I talk to? As a matter of fact, you've given me a recommendation of somebody I could talk to for landing pages. All right, that's kind of cool, right? So I trust the person you recommended because I trust you. Okay. Now, let's say I didn't know anybody. Not true in that case, but we'll use a different pain point. What am I going to do? I'm going to go to Google, or I'm going to go to YouTube. I'm going to type in, how do I solve my problem? So the thing that's interesting is that thought leader, you need your name, your content needs to populate when somebody goes to YouTube or Google and says, how do I solve this problem? And thought leadership is simply the opportunity without you selling yourself. So it's not commercials, it's not paid, it's not say, hey, look at me, bye, bye, bye. Thought leadership is your ability to put out the right amount of content to the right audience, so the audience that sees you can recognize that, oh, you might be able to solve my problem. That's the known piece of it. And that's what thought leadership is. It's being known as somebody who could solve a problem. And the thing to be thinking about, the more narrow scope you could have in terms of who you're going after, the better chance you have of being known, because it's a better opportunity. You know exactly where you should be sending and sharing your content.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because even though thought leadership sounds kind of like an academic, term, all of us, as business owners and entrepreneurs and people just who have a message and a passion to get out into the world, if we don't really understand the niche and who we're going to, channel that information towards. I mean, I see it all the time with my clients, they're just like, oh, I want to launch, but, they don't really know who they serve. They're just like, they're just starting out. So, and they don't have a list, and they're like, oh, well, I don't know anybody. And I'm like, well, you do know people. Look at your sent items folder. I'm sure you've got several people you've replied to in the recent past, so it's like, even if they don't have a list, an email list, people, and there are people who already like you. So it's not like anybody of, of us are starting out from scratch.
No, and there's many different places to go. If I could take about 2 or 3 minutes, I'll show you something else. And Des, I think you might have seen the first incarnation of this way back when. So way back when, I created a definition for thought leadership. So I'm just going to share my screen. And let's see, we'll do that. So I assume you can see my screen now. Let me move this out of the way so you're not seeing those on the line. And so Des, you saw this when this is a 2x2, audience by content. Right. And for the TED Talk, I put in this piece of it because it's this, I wanted to make sure I attracted the visual learner as well. And the one thing I'll say, you mentioned the word thought leadership. It got me thinking about the fact that I also will say recognize expert. You don't actually need to have the title thought leader not everyone in the world needs to be a thought leader. What you do need to have the title, at least in your mind, or more importantly, in your prospects' minds, you need to be the recognized expert we can go to. Right? Just simple. So this 2x2, it's audience by content. So what it's showing is, if you have no audience and no content, you're unknown. What I love about this particular piece, and actually we'll go here, if your content's very narrow, but you have a pretty big audience, you're an evangelist. And a decade ago and before that, being an evangelist was good. Evangelism is what companies wanted. But what happens today, the problem with being an evangelist is that if you're so narrow on your scope, you're not seeming like you're authentic. If you're not authentic, you're not trusted. If you're not trusted, people don't want to do business with you. So this is not a good place to be. So what you want to do is you want to be in this side. You want to share a good amount of content. And then it's Mark Twain. So Twain, if you don't know who it is, but he's sharing good content, you don't know the face. To be the recognized expert, you see the content and you know who it is. So, yeah, and this is, by the way, if you want to see this picture, you can go to thinkaha.com, and I have a tab on thinkaha.com that just talks about thought leadership.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and I think a lot of people may not be familiar with thought leadership necessarily, but they do, say expertise. And a lot of times, you have to be a published author to be considered an expert. And so that kind of leads us into our next question. why should people write a book? And if they should, what should it be on?
Oh, it's a great question. Nice lead in. I think we must have planned this, right? So, um, so here's the interesting part. Since the Gutenberg press, since the Bible, we've looked at this concept, this thing called a book, as the quintessential piece of knowledge. And nowadays what happens is, I'd say I started my publishing company in 2005. In 2005, people say, hey, books are dying, ebooks are in. Well, yes, ebooks are in. Ebooks are important, but physical books are still not dying. Still, the number of books are huge. The number of books sold. Ebooks have been pretty flat recently. Physical books are slightly on their upcline. It's just where they're buying it. They're not buying at bookstores, now buying online, and the behemoth that they're buying from. So what's interesting is if you can have a book that demonstrates you're the expert, so you demonstrate your thought leadership, then that's really important. So in the past, I can't tell you how many people, and I have a much better answer now, how many people would want to self-publish their own book. So can you go to CreateSpace and write your own book? Yeah, of course you can. Okay, let's talk about CreateSpace as a self-publisher. CreateSpace wants your money. That's all they want, is your money. They don't care if you have spelling mistakes. They don't care if your book sucks. All they care is that you pay them money to put your book out there. Because if people pick up their book, your book, they make money because they're printing your book. And if it's being sold through Amazon, they also make money from the Amazon sales. So the thing is, self-publishers are good because in the past, it's give you the ability to spread the word. But the thing is, and here's what I'll say, as a business owner, so almost everyone you're going to work with, until they get big, there are three things a business owner could do. They could satisfy existing customers, they could find new customers, and they could build product for tomorrow. Once they get big enough, or something you and I talked about even before the conversation, they start hiring a team. So now you're managing your team. So there are four things as an entrepreneur, four things you could do. Okay. So here's the interesting part. If you're going to self-publish a book, we estimate that we're going to save you 200 hours. So if you're going to self-publish a book, you now are becoming a publisher. Is being a publisher one of those four things? Right? And the answer is no. So why would you want to waste any time publishing your own book if you could be spending more time getting new customers? So that's the self-publishing thing. So what should your book be about, which was your question? The simple answer is kind of what we alluded to before when I talked about thought leadership and being an expert. You need to, if you're in business today, now let's say you're just starting your business from scratch. Well, then you need to find who's out there who might be a prospect and who might pay you and why. Okay. If you are in business today, you know who your prospects are and you know what their pain points are. So your book should be about their pain points. I mean, to be as simple as possible, if I have a book that says, here are the problems I solve, and this is how I solve those problems, then when I either am talking about the book or whether it's posted anywhere or the book's picked up somewhere, or even at a cocktail party, oh, I just wrote a book. It's called, and you give the name of the book, and they go, oh, I have a problem with that. Conversation opener. Okay. So the thing is, so let's talk about, we should have a book that basically demonstrates that we can solve the pain points that our prospects have. Now, the thing that's interesting, let me pick up the book here. We did publish this book. This is 100,000 words. It took the authors 3 years to do the first edition. It took them 9 months to do the second edition. The inside of the book is pretty meaty, right? So these are books, and some people would say this is the only thing that's a book, but the thing is, you don't need to do this. These guys use this book because they then close 6- and 7-figure consulting contracts. Okay. So in the engineering space, they felt like This is what they need. I'm doing their first AHA book I'm doing with these guys pretty soon. But this is what they felt they needed. Now, to me, all a book has to have is enough content to demonstrate you're the expert. So what I like better as a book, and here's one that we didn't publish yet, but will very shortly. I like books that, are thinner, about 120 pages, and hardcover. Okay. And the cool part, it has, we print color on the inside these days. Let's make sure I'm doing okay. And it has 1 or 2 AHA messages per page. Right? So here's something to think about. If, let's say you go to an event, you're given a book, it's a business book, and you kind of want to read it, but you don't have any time. What are you going to do? You're going to apply the Evelyn Wood speed reading, right? And you read some of the chapter summaries. You may look at some of the pictures. You read some of the paragraphs. You're going to go through the book, and you'll read it. In some cases, you could do it in 10 or 15 minutes. Maybe it'll take you a half hour, but you're going to go skim through the book. What these things are, these are the Evelyn Wood speed reading of the author's brain, right? So take the AHA messages, take those components, and by the way, here's one that we just published this, and this came from a 2-hour interview. You take those AHA messages. So what happens is any one of these messages in and of itself should capture somebody's attention. And then in our platform, we have a platform, and I'll show that super quick if that's all right as well. In our platform, we actually have, let's see, we'll do share screen again. I like Zoom. I could share a screen. So in our platform, we now have close to 800,000 users. There are 42,000 AHA messages. So if you're looking for content to share today, we've got 42,648 quotes you can share today for free. Okay. And let me click on a book. Here's another one of the books that we did. A lot of the books that we're doing these days are the Done For You service. And so what I'm doing with Done For You is we're doing a 2-hour interview. And the 2-hour interview focus on, guess what? Your prospect's pain points. Okay. Because if we focus on your prospect pain point, then we've created 140 AHA messages that any one of which could attract somebody's attention. So this is Laura Sokola. We did the interview with her. We do, for an AHA book, we do a cover design, a copy edit, a content edit. She's a speech coach. She's a speech coach, not helping you get speeches. She's a speech coach to help you how, as a leader, you should project yourself so that you have more influence than you may have today. Great, great content. Oh my God, I just so love talking with her. And she has a TED Talk as well that has gotten 4.5 million views. And so, and here it is. So think of this. This is the AHAthat platform. Here's her book, Maximizing Your Leadership Influence. Think of this as 3 pages from the book. And notice this particular page points back to her book. Every book gets their own customized URL. This particular quote points to her TED Talk. So if you want to see Laura Sokola's TED Talk, that's her URL. Here's an interesting one. Let's just read 2 because it doesn't have a URL. Leadership is an image. If people don't perceive you as a true leader, you're just the boss. That to me is what an AHA message is, right? It is designed to make you think to yourself, if you're reading this and you have people working for you, am I the boss or am I the leader? Oh, how do I become the leader as opposed to the boss? Oh, maybe I should read more of Laura's book. And then, of course, if you read more of her book, and you could see the entire AHA book by looking here, when you read more of her book, you're like, oh, maybe I should hire Laura. Okay, guess what? That's what the platform's supposed to do. And notice that any one of these quotes are now immediately shareable on social media.
Love that. Yep. From a done for you perspective, a lot of times my clients, they have to write their own tweets, their own, Facebook posts and everything like that, but it's already dialed in, as part of, your package. And so that's really smart because, I remember the first book that I wrote. It was called Tales of a Law School Dropout, and it was a memoir. And I had gone to law school.
What did Mom think about that book?
Mom, I don't think Mom read the whole book, actually. It's kind of like you said, people only have, they don't want to read a really thick book. It was an ebook. It was not a print book. And it's actually what got me into this online marketing sphere, because I published that book. It took me like 7 years to write it. It was crazy. I ran it through my critique group, 10 pages every 2 weeks. And I did that 2 iterations of it. I mean, it took me forever to write that book. And then when I published it, I took a virtual book tour class from Deborah Lansky, who teaches book marketing, and she introduced me to WordPress. And lo and behold, people asked me about, a website a month to do a WordPress blog for them, so now it's what I do. I mean, it is my full-time business to do done for you stuff. So it's very interesting how things shake out. But if I had never published that book, and I have 6 books published now, but, if I had never done that, people would not have perceived me as an expert, and also never have seen my author website and all of that. So it kind of started a chain reaction.
Oh, well, just as an aside, we'll get back to the typical interview. Every day you're presented with gifts, and those gifts can help you change your life and have you move in multiple directions. And the good news is that you were handed gifts and you took advantage of them. Many of us don't actually perceive the gifts that are handed to us, which means that you just have to be more open and more receptive. If you have a product, here's the cool part. Okay, let's say you have a product and you're pushing it in the marketplace, pushing, right? Which is, by the way, not what you should do. And you get feedback and people are responding to you on why they don't like it or what you should. Don't try to shoehorn them into the product. Listen, because they may be telling you the next product you should be inventing.
Yeah, and that's really good. And I like, kind of your method as well. And I'd like to, kind of introduce people to it more because, like I said, that first book of mine took 7 years to write and revise.
It's painful. It's painful to listen to.
It was painstaking, just to go to law school and not like that, and kind of, have the courage to say, okay, this is not for me. Even though I was excelling, I'm a very good student. My friends were like, Gina, can you give me your A, before you,
before you quit, can I have your A?
Right.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, it was painstaking. And so you say that you can actually write a book in 8 hours or less. So how does that happen?
Well, there's 2 things, and this goes back to, and I'll bring up the page so I could share it with you as well. There are 2 things here. There's the do-it-yourself model. So we'll talk about the do-it-yourself model, and then there's the do-it-for-you model. So for me, and this was a revelation towards the end of last year. The revelation was very simple, and I'm gonna switch screens while I'm talking. The revelation, 2 things that towards the end of last year happened. A, the TED Talk. Man, I'm telling you, being asked to do that and actually delivering it and spending the time and energy to make it right, I trust me, that's absolutely beautiful, and it just came out last week, so I'm excited about that. The other revelation is that my true customers, we're talking about me, my true customers are the done-for-you people, not the do-it-yourself. So let me step back for a second, and then we'll answer your question, your 8-hour question. And what I'll do is this URL is AHAthat.com/author for those that want to skip ahead. And it just have videos. This is why I do a book, where I created some content. And we basically have a 3-step process for writing a book. I'll even scroll further. Here's our process for writing, publishing, marketing. And I'll leave it here, and then I'll finish my story. So we have 4 publishing companies. I've published over 800 books. And now in retrospect, when I say this, it sounds really stupid, but trust me, it didn't seem stupid at the time. So think about this. I have a publishing company. My goal is to help authors get published quickly so they could use their book to drive more business, speaking, consulting, product sales. I would sit around becoming the thought leader and getting recognized and known, but I'd sit around waiting for people to write their books. And after they wrote their books, I would then publish it. So the only people I would work with would be the Gina Deckers who at the end of 7 years was ready to publish. And not only that, had the money to want to pay us to publish versus do it themselves. Okay, in retrospect, silly business model. We did well and we've made good money. And man, I wrote a great number of checks to Des and his co-author. So he's happy. And we write a lot of checks to our authors. Okay. What I learned towards the end of last year, and it came out in 2016, Des, I think you remember this. I did a Kickstarter. The Kickstarter hit 250% of goal. As a matter of fact, I'll show you the end results of the Kickstarter was this thing called the AHA Blaster. With the AHA Blaster, we now can automatically schedule the sharing of an AHA book on Twitter. So very powerful. So as part of this, I'll just show you, let's see, AHA books running. So I currently have a bunch of books which are running, which are sharing content. And as part of this, we ended up having, I guess I didn't click on it. Don't you hate that? Okay, AHA books running. Let's do that again. There we go. So what's interesting is, I'll do this and then we'll finish the story. This is basically, this particular book is being shared on this Twitter account. It's being shared 7 days a week, 3 times a day. And I'm sleeping and it's sharing, right? So it's pretty cool. So, and we do charge for the ability to share this, but we have a freemium key. And at the moment, the freemium key gives all the same functionality. It just has a couple commercials in there. So what happened is 20 people paid to have once they wrote their AHA book, to have us publish it. So 20 people paid. So towards the end, and that was at the end of 2016. So as the end of 2017 is coming, I'm going, okay, how many people have written their books and how many have republished? Are you ready? Wait, 3. 3.
That doesn't surprise me.
So what that means, and this is an interesting way to think about it, 17 people couldn't find 8 hours in a 12-month period. Right? Can I say it again? 17 people couldn't find 8 hours in a 12-month period. So what that killed my myth. My myth was, I'm going to make it so easy to write a book that everyone's going to want to write one. But this showed me, and by the way, bright people, very capable. I still talk to a bunch of them. I'm like, okay, when's your book coming? And there's always a good excuse. So that's when I realized, listen, and I went to one of the authors who paid and I said, okay, I'm ready. How about we do this? I can do a 2-hour interview. I can extract your genius on how you solve your prospects' pain points, and then my team will ghostwrite the book. And so we've now completely modified our processes, and my go-to-market strategy is, let's write the book for you. Because almost anyone could find the 2 hours, and then of course what happens is we send, and I'll show you what we send the spreadsheet with the AHA messages in it. It's easy to correct stuff afterwards. It's not as easy to sit down and write from scratch. So the done for you service is more important. So I'm going to answer the question, how do you write it in 8 hours? But I'll also say is, if time really still is an issue and money is not as much of an issue, we charge more obviously for the done for you service. If money is not as much of an issue, it's still, you could have, and I'll say this, any quarter you watch us, you could have your book done that quarter. Right? It's 2 to 3 weeks before you get the AHA book, which I showed you before. It's 2 to 3 months before you have the physical books done. And we print, as I've shown you, let's just show you one I hadn't shown yet. We'll show you Mark Dieterding's book on servant leadership. Once again, this is, we print in color. It's color on the inside. It's 1 to 2 AHA messages in each page. And it just gives the author that tool, and you could use either images from a stock photo house or images that you have yourself. But let's talk about the writing process. How can you do it in 8 hours? There's a 3-step process. And so it's 1, 2, 3, and I'll go back here and share. So first one is a Word document. 4 questions. What's your name? What's your bio? What's a 1-paragraph summary of, what's the title of the book? 1-paragraph summary review. Question number 1 is the most important question. How it reads, who is the reader, and what is their expectation from the book? But what it actually says, are you ready? You got this. Who is your prospect? What is their pain point? Okay, so that's what your book is about. When we do the interview, that's what I focus on. Step number 2, and this is for anybody. It's AHAthat.com/author. I've curated now over 70,000 AHA messages. And so this is a single page PDF, which basically has best practices for writing social media content. Free use, we don't have anything. Gina, you're going to tell me I need to put an email address in front of this, but I don't even have that yet. It's just you get here, you grab it, you share it, you read it. Simple, okay? And then step number 3 is an Excel spreadsheet. And that's where you put your AHA messages. And so we actually have, normally when you get to 30, something that you do is statistically significant. We've had 300 authors write their books in 8 hours or less. And so it really is. And I've had some authors, for instance, I've done, I think, 6 books with this guy. Here, we'll show you 2 of Jeff's books. Sorry, I meet you over. Jeff Shabbat's. That's Jeff on the back. He did this book he wanted to meet one of the top sales trainers in the country. He did meet him and said, hey, how about I help you write this book? Jeff writes his AHA books originally in 2 hours. Now, he's, I've got two or 3 authors who can actually do it in 2 or 3 hours. Now, the quality of what they do is not necessarily as good after 2 to 3 hours, but they're, just so focused. They're like, not me, I can't, I'm 8 hours, but they go and their content's there. So we did this book with Jeff. We did another one, which is so much fun. We did this book, Mom and Dad, I Promise I'll Get into College. So this is Jeff's middle child. And what we did, which was fun, is his sections are blue. Her sections are pink. She was 16 when she wrote this book. We made it an Amazon best-selling book, and she's spoken at events because Jeff has helped her get speaking engagements, or Dad has helped her get speaking engagements. As she's now applying for college, she's a best-selling author who has spoken at events. Right? So, so the cool part is when you do a book, okay, this is a long way of answering your question. I answered the question of why you should do a book, how do you do it quickly. When you do a book, what you want to make sure is you know the purpose. And you want to make sure that you can accomplish that purpose. Most of my clients, they pick up one client and it's more than paid for the done for you service, or they break even with one client anymore, they're making money. If this gets his daughter into the college she really wants to go into, what was that worth? Right? So anything you do, the thing that's interesting, when you get to a point where you can create both social media content, because 140 AHA messages are social media content, and a book which demonstrates that you are an expert at helping solve your prospect's pain point. If you can do that so quickly, whether it's 8 hours you write yourself or 2 hours because we do the interview, now you get to think about this concept of a book in a different way. Because when you're working with clients for the funnels that you're building, Gina, they should not just have a book. They should have one book for each client, each funnel you're focused on. Because each funnel is focused on a slightly different customer segment, right? You could solve a problem for CPAs, that's a book. You could solve that same problem, but for dentists, that's a different book. You solve that same problem, and you fill in the blank. When you could create books that quickly, now the book becomes more of this marketing vehicle. It just so happens that marketing vehicle, and I'll stop after I say this, that marketing vehicle is conceptually the equivalent of spending 3 years and a couple $100,000. Let me tell you what that means. How do you demonstrate you're an expert in a space? Well, you get a PhD, you spend 3 years and a couple $100,000, and you got PhD at the end of your name, you're the expert. How about spending 2 hours? You have the author of the book that solves your prospects' pain points in 2 hours and not a whole lot of money. You now have saved time and money to get to that point where you're now the expert.
Yeah, I love that. And especially, because it is focused on the marketing outcomes and the customer's pain points. Because, my first book, of course, it talks about my experience in law school, but, I didn't really have customers, based on that. And I did write, I actually, because I went into higher ed after that. And so I did help people get into law school, ironically, by helping them with their personal statements, which is something you have to write
Well, that's fascinating.
for admission committees and stuff like that. But it didn't turn into a business. But the next 4 books that I wrote, 21 essential tips for SEO, 21 rebranding tips for websites, those were all related to my business. And so had I known that, I probably wouldn't have spent 7 years on the first book and then, 1 year publishing 4 more books in a series, that were actually related to what my customer, what kept them up at night. So, it's we're so smart that you kind of just included everything, all under one roof in the package.
Oh, well, it's years of learning, right? It's when you publish 800 books, you occasionally get an author who spends all their time writing. And when they're done writing, they go away because they expect, are you ready? The content will sell itself. And that doesn't happen. And it's frustrating. Or authors who write books and they're good at marketing, but only in physical world. They just don't play with social at all. Well, so the reason for the AHAthat concept and platform is simply, hey, listen, as you're writing a book, you are building your social media content. It's just that simple. The reason for I guess I could publish books on things which are not related to the author making the incremental money. It's just, to me, what's important, when I look somebody in the eye and they say, hey, is it worth me spending money on your platform? Right? Well, to use it, it's free. Free to use, free to share. But if you're going to publish a book, is it worth it? The only answer I could say is, okay, what are you doing with your book? Right? And I think one of the things I often say, and this is one of my, when I stand on the soapbox, what happens different times in life, you get expertise in different areas. Right? One of the things that happen when you end up with aging parents is at some point in time, this is probably a bad example. Let me use a different example.
Yeah, I got my mom here. So
yeah, Mom, let's use not use an example.
Mom.
There are many points. Oh, here's a great example. I went out on a business dinner last night, and the person I was with took in a homeless girl who had been on the streets for a couple of years and now lives in the house and lives as part of the family. Same conversation, different conversation yesterday, somebody who is now taking care of 12 kids, 4 of them are foster kids. So the interesting part is you get expertise in doing that. And at some point in time, maybe as you're taking care of 12 kids, you don't have any time, but let's say the kids move out of the house, you end up with a lot of time, and she's developed all this expertise. Does she write a book on being a foster parent? Right? And so the answer is, well, it depends. If she's helping a nonprofit who is helping support foster kids, if she's helping the nonprofit, absolutely. If she has a business that's helping tie together foster parents and foster kids, yes. If she's doing it because she just wants to share her knowledge and expertise, no. Because the thing is, Gina, same thing. My first book, I spent so much time on it. It was when I was making a decision to buy a house. So I did a spreadsheet on rent versus buy, and I wrote a book it's actually called Home Ownership, the American Myth, the rent versus buy analysis, because I wanted other people to benefit from all the work I did. I became an expert on that decision, so I wanted other people to benefit. And and by the way, as a self-published book, we did great. I sold about $30,000 worth of books, and about $40,000 had a accompanying spreadsheet, but that was a whole lot of work. And guess what? I had a financial sponsor, and that was the real job I had. So I had a real job that paid the bills. And as a hobby, I self-published this book, and I pushed and pushed and pushed. And in retrospect, if all I did is find the places to really monetize, both, let's say, the rental boards that I could have pushed people to and got an affiliate fee there, or the realtors that I could have pushed people to get affiliate fee associated with realtors selling houses, then it might have been actually something really valuable, right? So you do a book. To me, the book that you do is the one that's going to help you get more business.
Makes a lot of sense. And I learned that the hard way too. I mean, having published 6 books now, just making those mistakes, it definitely was a learning curve, just because I didn't know anything about online marketing. I actually didn't know very much about social media when I first started with that first book. So, I mean, I'm actually going to, because I want to make sure we get time for this, but TechDoneForYou.com/Mitchell TED Talk. MITCHELLTEDTALK. So
cool.
That is the link to the TED Talk, which I watched it and I just really loved it because I'm a Toastmaster and I've been a Toastmaster for probably going on 13 years now. But you had very few ahs and ums, and you were on your A game when you were giving that TED Talk.
Oh,
and what I really liked about it, because I watched the whole thing, but you talked about kind of like having the courage to really give true feedback to people. Like you had a boss, and he asked you about your opinion on something, and you gave him your real true opinion, and you were kind of like scared about it, and so I loved how kind of authentic that story was, because a lot of times we're in business and we have our expertise, and I will tell people the truth. Like if they don't, if they're trying to, buy a system or whatever, and it's hugely expensive, I'm going to tell them, I think that's a hugely expensive system and I don't think it's a good fit for you. I'll actually tell people that, but really kind of being able to stand in your truth. I liked how you brought that into your talk.
It's so interesting. You just explained something to me. Late last night, it was about 3 a.m. Somebody sent me a private message on, can't remember if it was Facebook or LinkedIn, and he talked about how he didn't like the TED Talk. I'm like, really? And he had some great reasons, blah, blah, blah. And what was interesting is maybe he was testing to see whether or not I was really authentic, because everyone's entitled to an opinion, right? That's his opinion. And as long as he didn't blast it to the world, that's malevolent. But he's entitled to his opinion. Basically, one of the things that bothered him is he knew me from my CEO and board of directors days, where I was always in a suit and tie and pretty. And I'm now more casual and I wear more colors. And that didn't, in his sense of ethical values, that didn't give the same amount of authenticity of thought leadership as it needed to. It was just it was interesting. So thanks. I won't mention the person's name, but maybe he was testing. He's a smart guy. Maybe he was just testing me.
Well, I think, there's always going to be critics. And it's funny because, I do have a writing major. I have a bachelor's in composition. And so, I do on occasion, get criticism, and I have a critique group. So, I'm looking to improve the writing and stuff like that, and it's the same with Toastmasters, I'm looking to improve my speaking. So there's always something to improve. And the perfectionist in me, can't really just stop, at a certain level. I have to keep on, improving. But,
I was waiting for Mom to shake her head when you said the perfectionist.
She knows it. She knows it. It's not going to go away.
Hey, Gina, let's take questions while we have a little bit of time left.
Yeah, definitely. And before we get to the questions, I'm going to share one more link. And so you talked about your packages. And so you have one that's called Be Seen as the Expert, and it's kind of like a DIY, bronze package. You have different levels. And so if they go to this link, they'll be able to see the different levels. But TechDoneForYou.com/Mitchell AHA book. I put the link in the chat, and I'll also include the link in the replay. But can you tell people, if they're really wanting to write a book and they don't want to spend 7 years like I did on my first book, how you can help them with that?
Oh, wait, I'm going to that link now, but I got to turn off the volume. Okay, yeah. So I was just testing. Oh, so from now on, when I buy something on my platform, I've got your affiliate link in there. I
am an affiliate.
Awesome. So so when you go to that link, you just see all of our prices. I'm a big fan of just being as transparent as I possibly can. So if you write yourself, you follow at AHAthat.com/author, you follow that 3-step writing process. If we're interviewing you, basically once you pay, you then get brought to a calendar where you get to schedule time for 2 hours. It's actually, we scheduled 2 hours, 15 minutes just in case it goes over. And what I could say about the interviews, right now it's only me doing the interviews. We've written a writing school, and so the writing school is about ready for public consumption, but right now our ghostwriters we send through a writing school, and we're going to make that available for everyone soon. At some point in time, I'll create a certification program for the interviewers. It's relatively easy to do, but just not everyone can do it. And what it means, and the feedback I get from those we've been interviewing, it is the most amazing thing to have somebody else focus on them and their business for 2 hours. Because you're talking about how do you present yourself to your prospects so you can get their attention. I mean, that's the primary focus for me. I'm a people publisher that empowers you to share your genius. I want to pull that out of you and be able to put that in a book that you can share it. So that's what's appropriate is, listen, if you said to yourself over the holidays, I need to have a book done this quarter, just go for the Done For You service and we'll do it for you. And what I guarantee out of that 2-hour interview, that by itself is worth the price, not even having the books or anything else, because it will, God, I'd say 95% of those I've interviewed have told me that they've opened up a new opportunity or new door, a different way of thinking, a new product they're offering, because that conversation has helped them focus on the world in a slightly different way.
Very cool. And I'm going to go ahead and start taking questions now because we've got 10 minutes left, and I'm going to start unmuting people. So just kind of raise your hand if you have a question because, and Duncan has joined us. So I'm going to unmute Duncan. Duncan, can you hear us?
I think so.
Yeah, and we can hear you. Yay. Okay, so I know you've been very patient, and I know you do have questions for Mitchell.
No, that's good.
Fire away.
That's good. And thank you, Mitchell, for your presentation so far. Appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah. My pleasure.
Yeah. So it was interesting because I have, in the last week or so, we decided, we're going to do some books here. I wrote a book, and it was a long time ago. I wrote the first book in Canada on financial planning before everybody was one. But we're in healthcare.
You wrote the Bible of financial planning. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and that took years, and it was laborious, but it was hugely beneficial in terms of my career and business and so on. But we've been doing healthcare now for a long time. And as you can tell, I'm very old because I've had, many careers in my life. But anyway, I've been doing health for a long time.
Well, we just, we all are going to have many careers in our life. And looking at Gina, think about how many more careers she's going to have before she gets a couple more gray hairs.
And I've used Gina's services, and she does an excellent job. And it was because she had mentioned your name when I was in this mode, and it was sort of, okay, let's check it out. But my question is this, Mitchell. We're looking at, I was looking at a number of options, and they all kinds of packages where there's a nice set of templates and that sort of thing, and mind mapping that would, lead you through a series of processes, and you snap your finger and you got your book kind of a thing. And we have between my wife and myself, we have we could turn out a dozen books very quickly without a lot of additional research, simply because of our experience and so on. But my question was, in terms of the authoring side of your offer, because as a matter of fact, I looked at it last night and I saw, in terms of the sharing and the promotion and so on, a lot of really excellent value there. But my question is, in terms of the authoring side, the writing side, is what you've got there, like if I was to just sort of plug into that and sort of follow the process, are most of the people that engage in the process able to, what am I trying to say here? The question, I guess is in terms of your system, if I take the 8 hours or the 16 hours or whatever, is there a high probability that I'm going to end up with a viable product, a viable book? I guess that's the end of it.
Short answer, yes.
Mm-hmm.
What I had said earlier was we've actually had 300 authors write their books in 8 hours or less. Okay. And that's just following that 3-step process. So it's relatively straightforward. The thing that I might, I'm going to say this to you, and it doesn't matter if you decide to write it yourself or have us write it for you, but let me say this to you. I'll go back to the statement I made earlier. The question becomes, and this is what I would always say, my son's now 19, so I'd always say to him since he was 2, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Mm-hmm. So let's say it only takes 8 hours. What if you spent 8 hours marketing your company today? What is that worth for you? I mean, if you really spent the 8 hours marketing, mm-hmm. or in this case, 6 hours, because you're going to need to do a 2-hour interview, right? So you could write it yourself. And once again, I don't want to belittle you doing that. And if you're actually going to get it done, please, it's less expensive to write yourself. On the other hand, doing that 2-hour interview, we will pull the content out. And what happens is we will send you the spreadsheet with the 140 AHA messages. And then here's where it's interesting. I'm going to show you this. The average human doesn't want to read 140 messages, right? They want their content broken into sections or chapters. So in my book, this is my book on why you should write an AHA book. A section, we have an image here, and the section summary is a paragraph. A lot of our authors basically choose a paragraph for the section summary. Here's a cute picture of Jeff, and here's his section summary. This author, on the other hand, ended up taking blog posts. So this is Brad Freeman. And what Brad did is he repurposed blog posts for his section descriptions. So a potential outcome or a thought for you, if you're interested, is, and if you don't have the blog post you could repurpose today, go through the 2-hour interview, because it will, trust me, it's going to change the way you think about some of your marketing. We'll send you the 140 AHA messages. What happens is you may know ahead of time what your sections might be, and that'll be part of the interview, or it'll come out of the interview. You may want to then write the blog post associated with those interviews. Now, Des, let me give you something to think about. You could write the blog posts, or, and I said Des because Des likes to do video. So, but Duncan, you could do video as well. Oh, by the way, my son's name is Duncan, so I have to be careful on that.
And not
so
many
what I
of
would
us
say to
around.
Duncan, I should have said that. What I would say to Duncan is, and just because you can doesn't mean you should. One of the things that's fascinating, every AHA message can include a URL. So what I often say on your section summaries when I'm really pushing my authors these days, well, for each section summary, in addition to whatever you write, why don't you do a video? Do a 2-minute video of what this section means to you, right? And that's include the URL of that in there. If you're an artist, why did you come up with this set of art? Why did this make sense? Why is it important to you, right? Because people in the know, like, and trust factor, part of it, they want to see you. What the interesting part, which I kind of expected, but didn't really know, are the conversations, and the TED Talk only came out a week ago. Okay. The conversations I had this week of people who watched the TED Talk before they talk to me are so much different because, are you ready? They think they know me. Now, because I'm actually who I am in the TED Talk and the same in real life, they actually do know me. But what's interesting is that dance you have at the beginning of a interaction when you meet people, I didn't have to do that because they spent the 17 minutes watching my TED Talk. So, Duncan, what I'd say is spend more time. So, can you write your book and do it easily? Yes. Will I discourage you from doing it yourself? No. So, if you want to do it yourself, please do. What I might encourage you to do, though, is get the aha messages done quickly. We can do that with the interview. And then spend time figuring out other ways to get you, the essence of you, on the marketplace. Is that helpful?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, particularly if you're working with Gina, what may happen is at the same time you're doing the recording, you may do a recording that's top of funnel content that we also include as part of your book.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's what we have to, so what I think about, and the reason I love partners like Gina is it all fits together, right? There's not this standalone asset called a book. Let's just pull it all together. If you're going to sit down and do a video, hey, if it could be used for two purposes, great. If you do two different shootings, that's great. But what I encourage you to do is get you, the essence of you out there, because that's who your prospects want to see.
Mm-hmm. 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 Okay.
Oh, Des has his hand up.
All right, unmuting Des. Hi, Des.
Thanks, Duncan, for the question.
Oh,
Des, I could see your mouth moving.
Be muted on his end too. So you're unmuted on my end. Make sure you're plugged into your mic. He's checking his.
And now I see a healthy body.
Settings.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can
Yes.
hear. It's a little bit faint though.
How's that? Better? Is that better?
A little better. Yep.
Look, I'll be very quick. I just wanted to say, in terms of the long term, now it's 12 years since we wrote that first book on LinkedIn. And then there was the second edition, which was very nice, 2006. I still use that, even though the content is now out of date because LinkedIn has changed so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And like Duncan, the world is full of financial planners now. The world is full of LinkedIn experts. And I think there are probably, my estimate would be at least 1,000 people who call themselves Mr. LinkedIn. And I get called Mr. LinkedIn here locally, and I kind of go with it. But now when people say, do you know Joe, he's only 22 and he's a LinkedIn expert. And I said, that's great. I wrote the first book on LinkedIn, one of the first books on LinkedIn. You never know whether it's the first.
Actually, Des, you wrote the first book on LinkedIn. I actually was contracted by Reid Hoffman and Konstantin Gerlich to write the first book on LinkedIn, and you wrote it.
It was a fascinating process. And, Bill Vick did all those wonderful interviews, but he always says, you shouldn't call yourself co-authored because you wrote it. And I thought, oh, yeah, okay. I think we all wrote it together. So that's the long-term thing. 12 years later, I can still use that to stand out from the crowd. Even though the content isn't that relevant now. Well, it is in some ways, but so much is dated. I just share that with you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Des. Do you have any feedback for, Duncan, since he's, just thinking of starting this process, just any tips on, what you experienced?
Well, Mitchell has sent me a lot of lovely checks in the past, and he's not paying me anything for this. But you won't find anyone better. I've gone into all this publishing business with other people, and the difference between the difference between Mitchell and others is you will get that guy helping you, and whether remotely or directly, so that's a fundamental difference. And as he's indicated, he'll tell you if he doesn't think it's a good idea. He's told me a few things he didn't think were a good idea in his time.
But I was nice about it, right?
You were.
I was smiling as you were talking about 12 years there. How about 32 years after I wrote the financial planning book, and it's still very significant for people who are in the business.
That's great.
Like 3 decades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Congratulations.
All right, fantastic. And we are almost out of time, but I'm going to unmute my mom as well because I wanted to acknowledge her presence here.
Sure.
I would not be in this world without her. So any comments, Mom?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, I am so privileged to be Gina's mom. She has helped me in more ways and continues with the generation of her son going to be born in June. I am so proud of her and what this means to our family and all of you today. Mitchell, I have a quote book that I use as a healing process for when my husband passed, and I'm also an artist. So I have many drawings and meaningful things to me that help me through my pain. It's very personal, and I'm just about finished with this quote book, and with Gina and now you, I'm totally encouraged to begin this book, quote book.
Beautiful.
Yay, yay, very good. Well, I want to be conscious of people's time today, so thank you so much.
Congratulations, by the way.
Yes, I am pregnant, you guys.
Oh, Gina, yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah, I'm expecting a little baby boy in June. So if you're watching the replay, it may already be June, who knows? Yeah, I will repeat those links. So TechDoneForYou.com/Mitchell TED Talk is where you can go find the 17-minute TED Talk. I highly encourage you to do that. It's a great talk. And then also you can find out more about the AHA books, TechDoneForYou.com/Mitchell AHA book. So thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, and Des says there has to be a book in that. Yeah. Yes, thank you. Okay, so thank you so much, Mitchell, for joining us today. And I am so grateful that I had a ton of fun interviewing you today.
Oh,
thanks, Mitchell. Great.
Oh, Des, so good to see you again.
Absolutely.
And Rita, nice to meet you. Duncan, nice to meet you. But Des, 12 years. Holy cow.
Yeah. And the other Duncan used to sit on your knee when we were having those long telephone conversations.
Yes, indeed. Not this Duncan.
Mitchell's son, Duncan. All right. So thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye for now.